I'm talking all about weather right now because I may be biased, but obviously I talk about the weather a lot. And for a lot of you at home, I'm sure you do too, whether it's small talk in an elevator or some people's careers like mine, weather is everywhere. Our next guest has made it his mission to figure out just how do these forecasts work. He is taking us inside the weather machine. Andrew Blum, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
So this book is an incredible feat. You not only tackle the forecast today, but you kind of take us back to the origins of the forecast as well. And you have a line right off the hop in the beginning of your book that you say, if you don't mind, I'll share. You say, I love the idea that something as uncontrollable and expansive as the atmosphere could be systematically understood, and that understanding could be absurdly useful. And you get it. That's why I love weather.
Yeah, I mean, it amazes me that it's both these banal decisions, like do you bring an umbrella or wear a jacket, and then it's also these catastrophic things that happen, and you kind of have to accommodate both and think about how to help people understand both.
So let's talk about one of those catastrophic events. We'll talk about Superstorm Sandy. This was a huge shift in showing the public the understanding that we have achieved with forecasting.
Yeah, that was really what got me going with this. It was 2012, and it was really 8 days ahead that in New York City, where I live, we sort of knew the storm was coming. And 8 days was a big surprise. I mean, 3-4 days for a hurricane. But it really made me realize that it wasn't the meteorologists who were kind of putting the pieces together, but they were really relying on these supercomputer models that had this capability I didn't even appreciate.
And these models, these supercomputers that didn't exist like 100 years ago, we weren't even there at that point at all. We didn't even have human computers that could do this kind of math.
Yeah, I mean, that's really the thing. I mean, you need to both have observations of the entire atmosphere all over the Earth, and for that, we've really needed satellites to kind of make the difference. And then we need the supercomputers to put them all together and kind of run them forward ahead in time. It's really only the last 20, 30 years that those have been useful tools.
To give perspective, with Superstorm Sandy, at 8 days out, the origins of the storm, the beginnings of the storm, hadn't even formed yet. The computer models were able to...
It's like time travel,
Right, like they were predicting something that hadn't even developed yet, seeing far into the future. To understand weather patterns and to be able to forecast them, we need to be able to collect data, as you mentioned, around the world. And you have an interesting story in the book about the Germans and how they were collecting weather data from far west into the Atlantic off the coast of Canada.
Yeah, during World War II. It's supposedly one of the only times there was any Nazi incursion on North American soil, and it was to put this remote weather station there, with a huge radio antenna and a thermometer and wind speed, and it would send signals back automatically. It only worked apparently for a few weeks before it was either jammed or the battery died or something. But the fact that there was so much effort made to bring a U-boat, over and put it up on the sort of remote spot on the Labrador coast, all for weather observations. It didn't work, but it was that's the kind of sort of enormous moves we need to make in order to collect these observations of the atmosphere.
And why was that weather information so important?
For forecasting during the war. I mean, the great World War II story is with D-Day. I mean, it's really, D-Day was pushed back a day because of the weather forecast. And had D-Day not been pushed back, the invasion might not have been successful. And it's really pointed to as one of these moments that shows how important it is to be able to see into the future. And of course, a forecast that was right. So always a good story for meteorologists. But.
When we look at the weather models and how far they've come, and then we compare that to the conversations we're having around climate change, where the Earth's atmosphere is projected to warm by 1 or 2 degrees. It sounds marginal. It sounds minor to the average person. What impact does that have on the models that are there right now?
Well, it's interesting. With human meteorologists, they're kind of bound by past experience. They say, well, I know my lifetime of storms. That's probably what is going to happen again. But with the computers, they're not bound by past experience. So when we have this new crazy extreme weather, enormous amounts of rain or really powerful storms, the supercomputers are more ready to say this is going to be wild. And I think the humans are getting used to listening to that, even though these extremes are so different from what we've had in the past.
It's a learning curve every single day, in and out, as we learn more about the science and it develops. And we thank you for this book because it is fascinating.
Thank you. I'm so glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you. It's fascinating not only for me with my career, but for the average reader as well. So the book is called The Weather Machine. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for watching. If you like this, be sure to subscribe here.
And you can check out more Your Morning videos right here.